Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host and producer of Pause and Rewind, the podcast that chats to changemakers, thought leaders and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And, let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now, but how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences, realisations and relationships in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now, because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes and a little of what makes our guest tick. So whether you're here for insights or inspo or simply want to know about your heroes, this podcast is for you. You might never know someone's story, but if you pay attention, you'll hear it, you'll see it and you'll feel it. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Pause and Rewind. This episode is going out on Tuesday, the 14th of October, and tomorrow, if you're listening to it then, on Wednesday, the 15th of October, is the Independent Podcast Awards. I said it in last week's show, but in case you missed it, I have been nominated as a finalist for the Independent Podcast Awards in the Love, Sex and Relationships category. Again, I'll take it. Not sure why, but I'm so hyped. I'm really, really excited about the awards. And so, yeah, if you're listening, keep your fingers crossed for me. I'm so chuffed to make it to a finalist, but obviously would love to win. So, yeah, keep them crossed. And thank you so much for all the support. In this conversation, I am chatting to Oscar Davies, aka the non-binary barrister. Oscar is Tier 1 Rising Star Barrister at Garden Court Chambers and the first publicly recognised non-binary barrister. Earlier this year, Oscar won the King's College London Distinguished Alumni Changemaker of the Year 2025 award for their work around trans advocacy and non-binary rights. And if you wander down the Strand, past the Strand Campus of King's College, you will see Oscar up there with some true historical change makers. And so I was so hyped to chat to Oscar. We haven't really had much of a proper conversation. We've kind of seen each other in passing, said hello, but I was really excited to dive into their origin story, get to know them more about the work they do, and I was not disappointed. We chat through so much in this conversation. It's a whirlwind of a conversation. We chat about professional life and personal value, ADHD, little Oscar being quite a precocious child and having some fruity angles, those are Oscar's words, and the importance of community, especially right now. There's some cracking moments in this, including finding out that little Oscar wanted to be a pop star, and Oscar still sings and loves the dancing, so I need to see that. But yeah, enjoy the conversation. Let me know what you think. Here it is. Cheers. Hey there, Oscar. Welcome to Pause and Rewind. It is amazing to have you here.
Hi, Neil. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to dive into this conversation, and I'm going to start with the question that I ask all my guests, and that is, what does the world look like for Oscar Davies, aka the non-binary barrister, right now?
So things are going pretty well. It's not always like that, I hasten to add. But no, I mean, in terms of my personal life, things are like taking off, going well. I'm doing interesting work, have great friends and family. They're not being crazy at the moment, which is really great. So we love that. But yeah, I mean, notwithstanding that, we're obviously in a massive like societal implosion, explosion moment. So that's pretty intense to deal with. And sometimes, honestly, I just don't read the news on several days. I mean, mainly because I have lots of work, but like, sometimes I just don't read the news because it's too intense. You know, trans people are being come at from all angles. We have the increase of certain political parties who are gaining more and more traction. We have these kind of like interesting but quite ridiculous debates about like what you can and can't say, freedom of expression, all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I'm just going to turn off my email because that was my email noise. At least it shows that I'm still busy. But no, I mean, mainly I'm personally good, and I feel like I'm surrounding myself with like a semi-permeable cloak of protection of love from like friends and family. But ultimately, the protective cloak is needed because the broader zoom out perspective is quite scary, and seeing where we're going towards socially, politically, can be, yeah, a pretty scary place.
And those two things, those life going well and dealing with the shit show that we're seeing, both exist simultaneously. How
Yeah.
are you taking care of yourself and those around you during this time? Because that, that positive mindset and that ability to crack on is not something that's accessible at all times.
Yeah, I think no, it helps when like your work stuff is going well, because whether you like to admit it or not, all of our personal selves are bolstered by our professional selves, meaning that we kind of take a lot of our value and inspiration in terms of like whether we're doing well at work or not. So in some ways, I feel quite protected by like my own success that's happening at the moment. I remember this time last year, it was not like that at all. Like I had like 4 cases that I lost in a row, and this thing happened, and that thing happened, and this thing in personal life happened, and it was all going wrong. But I know from just how I am that like I have a very strong degree of like mental fortitude and like resilience because I've had to over my life. And so, yeah, I think that ultimately sometimes, even though everything seems to be going to shit, sometimes if you have the knowledge that actually, well, I will get through this, it might not be nice and I may not do it that gracefully, but ultimately I will do it and I will end up at the other end in some sort of other form of myself, then I think that's what counts. I think in terms of how I support like my family and my community, I always make sure I check in on my family when I can. And in terms of my community, like I really do believe in kind of the power of like the multiple over the individual, and the power of like queer community as being another type of family. We all have to look out for each other. And so I do what I can to do that, whether it's like doing videos on kind of like advocacy on like trans rights, or whether it's like helping a friend from the scene who's been discriminated against at work or something. Like I'll almost always make the time or try and make the time to help these types of people, because that's for me giving back to my community. And it's also using my position of privilege and kind of like leveraging that, like being a barrister, like being white, educated, male presenting most of the time, and therefore with male privilege, even though I'm non-binary. So like, I think I really don't mind using all of those aspects of privilege to kind of lean into, yeah, helping my community, because I think like if everyone was a bit more generous with their time, I'm not saying with money, because obviously everyone doesn't, like, that's not available to everyone, but if everyone was more generous in terms of like having more of an abundance mindset, you could call it, then we would all help each other more. I mean, my view is like in a room of 20 queers, you've always got everything that you may ever need in that room, kind of thing. Like all together, you can all pull resources and get exactly what someone will need in that moment. And I truly believe that. So yeah, I guess I have like quite a high degree of hope, and like a high degree of hope in the future, and like that we will be able to like get out of this mess where we are now. And also a sense of like me being a small cog in like a bigger picture kind of community. But also I think one of my themes at the moment is like empowering people to use their voice. Like, I'm really passionate about people kind of like harnessing their voice more and being able to be like, actually, I'm a powerful individual. Like I have power just in knowledge. For me, knowledge is power. So if I can furnish people with knowledge through my videos and through my talks and this and that, that is really empowering for other people, because then that means that they are more likely to, like, they shouldn't really need me after that kind of thing. Like I don't necessarily want everyone to come to me with legal issues. Like I would much rather they're like, oh, well, actually, yeah, like Oscar pointed me to this, or I know that I have these rights. Like I know that I'm protected by Gender Reassignment under Equality Act if I'm trans, for example, or something like this. And they can actually assert their rights in that way, because we're in a position more and more when we feel like our rights are being repealed or not respected. So I think like it's even more important for everyone to harness those rights in the ways that they can.
I mean, so much has come up in what you said in that short amount of time there. Firstly, love the idea of you'll get through it, but you might not get through it so gracefully. I definitely
Yeah,
feel
you
like
don't
I'm
have to be a swan. I've been called online a dying swan by one of my haters, and I think that's quite funny.
I
But you
That's
know what?
amazing.
I think the move you've seen from my dancing is called swan dive, not dying swan. But also, swans are, yeah, graceful even if they're dying. But also, if you're not graceful, that's also fine.
Well, it has to be. Sometimes we just have to settle for that, right?
Yeah.
But I think that you hit the nail on the head where you said we can all show up. We can all show up more and give a little bit more time and give a little bit of ourselves in that abundance mindset and passing that on.
Yeah.
Your journey to becoming the non-binary barrister in terms of your social media profile seems to have skyrocketed, particularly over the last kind of year or so. Was that a deliberate choice? Did you find that that was something that you'd planned on? What was the move from just being, very, very professional to having that social media profile and that tagline of the non-binary barrister?
Yeah, honestly, it was planned. I didn't know to what extent it would increase in profile, but I had planned that to happen. So, like I think I moved chambers like a year and a half ago to Garden Court, and Garden Court is like quite like radical left. It's like known for being quite like radical in its own way. So I felt like I had more scope in terms of what I could do. And also, there came a point where I had to decide whether I was doing this social media stuff seriously or not. Because as a barrister, you get to advocate for people, but it's only within court generally, and
Mm.
it's quite limited in its scope. Whereas I knew from my background that I had all the tools of what it takes to like be big on social media, whatever that means. But I was also thinking, how can I like broaden my scope of people that I want to speak to and to kind of inform them on these topics? I also realized that I have quite an unusual, like, unique selling point, USP, in the sense that I'm like the first non-binary plus barrister. So that's already like quite a weird niche. And also, there's not really many trans lawyers in general, trans plus lawyers. So it's like I mean, the fact is, whilst it skyrocketed this year, I've actually been hustling on this for like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I can't remember how long, maybe 5 years. And yeah, I think I realized like near the end of last year, actually had a conversation with one of my longest friends, Sophia Smith Gaylor. She's like a TikTok journalist, but like very innovative and like has got like 1 million followers on this and that. And basically she was like, yeah, Oscar, the thing is, if you could do video content so well, but you need to know how to do it and like what's going to work. So I did Sophia's video crash course, I think in February 2025. And this tells you all like how to do the positioning, how to write the hook of the video, how to do the scripts, this and that. And I remember like kind of finding it annoying because I was on holiday in Georgia at the time, the country. And I had to make these like 3 videos in the week. And I was like, oh, why am I having to do this like work kind of stuff? But ultimately, I'm really happy that I did it because from then I started getting proper viral videos. And it was also, I suppose, coincidentally near the time when the Supreme Court for Women's Scotland case came out. And this was like the case which decided that under the Equality Act, sex means biological sex, which has had a lot of like potential ramifications for trans people accessing public spaces, which we can talk about. But yeah, so I did a few videos on that, and then they were going, like 100K views, 150K views, like on these types of videos. And so I think it was almost like I'd been setting myself up for this increase. I basically knew that as soon as I did this video course, like my views would increase quite dramatically. And I also knew that I'd have to start committing, i.e. doing 2 video posts and 1 carousel per week if I'm going to beat the algorithm kind of thing on Insta. Yeah, so I suppose in some ways, like I kind of knew it was going to happen to some extent, but I didn't know to what extent.
Mm.
And obviously like, social media is social media. Like, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. In some ways, the follows are, somewhat like empty. It all exists on a kind of empty space, right? It's all like metaphysical at the end of the day. But at the same time, like, if you can exert more influence, and I say it in like a casual way of like, if I can get people more rights, then that's a great thing. Or if I can get people to think more about their rights, or think more about the language that they're saying things, which may or may not be discriminatory, then that's also a great thing. So this is kind of, how I charted it. But in reality, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, more people know about you and you're more like recognized in the street or whatever. And it's like, oh, influencer barrister kind of thing, which is like cringe, but probably true at this point. Like, I think you have to take it with like a big pinch of salt, but ultimately, I think it's important that I know that I'm not doing it for like some sort of fame or glamour. Like, if I was just seeking that, I could do so many different things, which would be much easier than this, right? But my point is that like, I have a unique position in that I really know the law super well in terms of this like discrimination plus LGBTQ plus angle. And I can do it in such a way which conveys it like hopefully clearly and concisely in a way which is not like all old fuddy-duddy like lawyer terms and vibes, because that's not who I am as well. Like, I have a performance background. I was a musician before I was a lawyer kind of thing, and it's like I really build on I think I build on those skills that I already have, because it's like I do use those skills in my lawyer job, but I feel like I can use them more and in a more creative way potentially on the social media side of things.
Yeah, and it shines through. I think that your content is so accessible. As someone who's someone that considers myself as an ally, I take so much from it in terms of my own education. But you do it in an accessible way. You do it in you add a touch of fun. You add a touch of sparkle to it as well. And I think it is really unique. Are you happy to talk a little bit about the current case with the trans legal clinic, and because that's really interesting, and the way you're keeping people updated with that as well using your socials?
So I suppose taking a step back, so we've spoken about the For Women Scotland case, FWS is sometimes known as, and basically in that case they allowed a number of interveners. A lot of the interveners, so when you have Supreme Court, this was in the Supreme Court, the highest court in the UK, and basically you have like the main parties, and then you have the defendant, and in this case, the discussion was as to whether to have political parties, whether the women who are being chosen could include trans women or not. So it's like a very specific issue, but it somehow became much more broad in terms of who can be a woman or not. And when it went all the way up to Supreme Court from Scotland, the Supreme Court basically didn't allow the interveners. They allowed all interveners who were either taking an anti-trans stance or a potentially anti-trans stance or like a middle stance. But there was pretty much none of the interveners, bar Amnesty, I think, took a stance which was on the pro-trans side. And the problem is that amongst the people who tried to intervene, there was Dr. Victoria MacLeod, the UK's first trans judge, and Dr. Stephen Whittle, very respected professor and academic trans man. And they both tried to intervene, and the Supreme Court said no. They didn't give any reasons as to why they were not allowed to intervene. And usually when you intervene, you basically shape the arguments and you shape how the Supreme Court is going to understand it. And they had witness statements, for example. And essentially that was not allowed. So therefore, the case now with Trans Legal Clinic, assisted by W Legal, is basically saying, essentially saying that not permitting Dr. Victoria MacLeod to intervene was a breach of her Article 6 rights, which is your right to a fair trial, because it was unfair not to allow them when there was lots of like anti-trans type organizations. And it meant that the balance was imbalanced, which led to the judgment, which we now know is potentially incredibly damaging for trans people. So that's essentially what the case is about. We still have to wait for the European Court of the European Court of Human Rights, which is in Strasbourg, to basically get back to us. But yeah, that's probably as much as I can reveal at the moment. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the social media angle, I think, we realize that the case is also important from a kind of like trans hope perspective, I suppose you could say, in the sense that like, not only is the case important from a legal angle, but also for people to maintain hope. I mean, you probably know, but like the suicide rates amongst the trans community is like very high and keeps on increasing because we're given such a belligerent environment in which to exist. And so it's also important like that the case is seen and perceived by trans people wanting to. I think it's important that people don't completely lose faith in what might be called the institution. Like in lots of ways, I think the institution is always going to be problematic and always going to be difficult. But I think unless you're willing to completely move country, which I mean, lots of trans people are considering at the moment, but like, I think there has to be a degree to which you believe that justice can be done and justice will be seen to be done, and that the people making the decisions aren't going to be automatically against you. I think the problem is at the moment that like there's a perception by lots of LGBTQ plus people that there's a certain tide shifting, which means that the government is no longer necessarily acting in their interest, and they also don't perceive judges to necessarily be acting in their interest. And that's a real issue in terms of the rule of law, like access to justice. If they believe that the judges are going to be against them in the first instance, like that's really a bad thing for the law. And I remember when the Supreme Court judgment came out, I remember being quite embarrassed to be a lawyer at that moment, because I realized like the potential catastrophic effect that such a judgment, which is, made by the most senior judges in the country, could have on my community. And yeah, so that's basically where we are with that.
With that sense of embarrassment, because you're truly successful in what you do, you're clearly passionate about it. How do you balance that sense of kind of embarrassment within the profession, and how do you navigate those conversations internally when it comes up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more how do I navigate the push-pull in terms of the more small c conservative type of profession that I'm in.
Yeah, and I guess your identity as well as your
and my
professional
own
standing.
self, which is like not small c conservative, and kind of like negotiating space and professionality, I guess. I think I've definitely found a way to do it. Like, I think my profession, I would say I take my job very seriously, but I don't necessarily take myself that seriously. Like, I don't mind poking fun at myself. Like, I don't mind if someone calls me a dying swan, because maybe in that video I do look a bit like one. Like, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't really mind that. But at the same time, I do take my job very seriously. But I also think the job takes itself a bit too seriously as well. Like, ultimately, you are literally people dressing up in flowing gowns, going to court and wearing a wig. Like, let that sink in. That is quite ridiculous, like, on any view. And I'm not saying that drag queens are ridiculous, but whatever category they fall into, barristers are not that different category. So I do think that there's a kind of like a campness to the bar, which I think does not get drawn on enough. And yeah, sorry if I'm adding some glamour to the bar. Like, it deserves some glamour, because in some ways, like, it's crusty and old and pale, male and stale. But in other ways, it can be quite a fab job. Like, if you get justice for your client, like, it's the best feeling ever kind of thing. And it's such a great thing to make such a material difference to someone's life. Yeah. Like, I can just, well, I mean, usually it is a lot of effort, but sometimes I can, in a very minimal effort, like, make such a massive difference to someone's life just because I know the law and I can just, like, write some scary letters. Like, that's quite a big thing, which I guess I don't really think about much, because I don't really have to, but I think sometimes it does pay to take stock of, I suppose, like the usefulness or the power that you hold in terms of like society. Like, and I think we can all have that usefulness. Like, it's not just because I'm a lawyer and I think I'm important. Like, it's not about that at all. It's more like I think it's important that we all know where our strengths lie and we all can like harness that and also not be afraid to like spend time working on ourselves, making us better. Like, I know that one of my best strengths is being able to persuade people of stuff. It's always been one of my best strengths. So it's like, yeah, I've worked on making that even better. Like, I've gone to advanced advocacy courses. I've done this, I've done that to increase my persuasive skills. And to be honest, I probably haven't, I don't have to do that, but I care about, yeah, my friend the other day was like, Oscar, do you think you're like a bit obsessed with self-improvement and self-development? And I was like, well, I'm not sure about obsessed, but it's definitely something which I care about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, we have to appreciate that things are not always going to be good for us and that in the lowest points as well, like that's a lot to be said about, who supports you, whether you can support yourself and whether you can like be there mentally for yourself if you're going through it. I think it's also like super important. But ultimately, yeah, I think the feeling of being in a small C conservative profession can be quite tiring in the sense that I can sometimes be like, do you even deserve me to be here? Like, I'm spending so much energy trying to make this better, and yet you're just being like all boring and stuff. But ultimately, yeah, ultimately I don't mind it. And it also gives me the tools to like make a big difference that lots of people don't have. So I'm sticking with it for now.
I mean, you're smashing it, and just know that those wins that are being shared across queer media and by yourself are being celebrated. I see it. I love to see it. So great to hear how you use not just your privilege, but your expertise, your skills, and your passion to make a difference. I am so excited to dive into your origin story and hear a little bit more about how this all came to be. So, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Yes, let's do it.
Here we go. Take me back. Tell me all about little Oscar.
Okay, I think I was a somewhat precocious child. When I was in the cot, apparently, according to my mum, I was always like randomly, I would not really cry that much, but I was always just like smiling and laughing, but like mainly to myself. I would like entertain myself for hours with either like making weird things or like humming and singing and this and that. So apparently I was kind of like randomly, yeah, like quite creative from a young age, I guess. And yeah, I'd be interested to know what you were like as well, because I can imagine maybe you were. Seeing your color story at the moment, I'm like, Neo seems like a very creative person. Yes.
I was a little bit the same.
Yeah. So I was just like, yeah, in the court, chilling, living my life. And then I suppose when I was at primary school, I was like, the thing is, my parents, well, I will not say anything bad about them here, but like they weren't perfect, let's just say.
Okay.
But at the same time, one of the good things that they were good at is that they were very like open and very liberal. One could argue too liberal at points, but like, yeah, they're very open and very liberal. And like, I literally went to primary school one day in like reception or year one with like 30 bunches in my hair, like this, like,
Love that.
yeah, I was just like, and I didn't care. I was just like, yeah, I'm just like doing this vibes. And then I had like, and this is also quite interesting from like a trans or LGBT angle. I always have been and always probably will be surrounded by like, yeah, I like at primary school I had like five friends who are girlfriends, like kind of thing. And they were always like the popular kids and they would kind of like protect me kind of thing. And I just always had girls as friends. Like it's always been the case that my friends are more girls than not, I suppose. What that says about me, I don't know. But like, fact is, I had fab friends in primary school and it was to the extent where like I was quite free. Like I would dye my hair all sorts of colors when I was like 7, 8, 9. Like I'd go to Boots and be like, can I please buy this? Like this blue semi-permanent hair dye. And then the Boots person would be like, no. And I'd be like, but like it's a present for my mum. And then she would give it to me and then I'd be like, yes. So, you know, we have to make ends meet when we do. But yeah, so I'd be like going around with like pink and blue hair. In year two, I was cast as Elizabeth the First in the play Elizabeth the First. Like in year nine, I had such long hair that when I went to see my grandma who had dementia, she was like, "Oh, who's this nice young girl?" Like this kind of thing. So yeah, that was, I guess, the starting point, and there was always some kind of like, yeah, fruity angles in terms of how I presented myself. I was always doing these like performances. You know, I have a background in like gymnastics, ballet, this type of stuff, like when I was younger. So there was always this performance angle. But yeah, so that's probably like the like previous to primary school bit. And then secondary school was a bit different because it was like this weird boarding school called Christ Hospital, which is like a charitable boarding school for poor people, basically. Like
Okay.
pretty much everyone who goes there is or was at least at that time on a full scholarship. And it was like, but it was like kind of military, and we had a marching band, we like march into lunch and stuff like this. And at that school, I was quite repressed because I didn't feel like I could come out as, I suppose, queer or as non-binary. And so I kind of just became what I call like nerdification, which is like just like nerdified myself and basically just like fell into my studies and fell into my music and my practice, playing clarinet and cello and singing. And yeah, I basically just became a bit of a nerd, but actually, so I was quite repressed in like 11 to 18, but in the same breath, I'm not mad that it happened because it taught me the value of discipline. It taught me the value of hard work. I had to like basically grow up super fast, and it taught me how to be super self-sufficient from a very young age. So in a way, it was kind of good for me. And then, yeah, I did school, got really good grades, like that was all good. But it wasn't because I don't think I was like the most naturally smart from doing no work. It was like I actually trained myself to be smart.
Okay.
I think, well, no, I was always naturally like creative and naturally musically and like linguistically smart. But stuff like maths and stuff is like, I was never really good at it, but I still managed to get an A star at GCSE because I taught myself how to do it, kind of thing. And so I think there was like, it was useful in the sense that it taught me the value of hard work, but also potentially like the like powers of the brain, if that doesn't sound too weird, but in the sense that it kind of taught me that like I could basically almost learn anything or teach myself anything, and like there's no limit to what you can learn or achieve, kind of thing. But it's, you know how they say limits to creativity bring great things. I think that was almost an interesting one because it was like I was being limited in a social sense because I didn't feel like I could be myself, or I was being a truncated version of myself. But that meant that I was more creative and invested in my academic work and my musical work. At points, I was literally doing like 4 performances a week, as well as doing like being the captain of the hockey team and being the leader of the choir, and then also like doing 14 GCSEs and like this and that. It was like so crazy when I think about it. But at the same time, these days everyone's like, "Oh my God, Oscar, how do you do so much? Like you're doing this and that and the other." I'm like, honestly, I've always been doing that because it's always been like a case where I'd spin 10 plates and hopefully they don't fall down. They don't usually fall down. Maybe they do occasionally, but like not really. And I feel like maybe that's also part of my like ADHD side. Is like, this is kind of when I'm at my best, when I'm like at juggling the most or almost the most, and I can just do all the things at once and do it to like a very high standard. And then the last part of, I guess, this like education journey, if that's what we want to call it, is like this yeah, I guess when I finished school and I went to uni, I went to King's College London, and I basically was like, I'm not going to be a truncated version of myself anymore. I'm just going to be myself, without any limitations or without any mediation, really. Like I refuse to mediate the self anymore because I've been doing it for like, 7 years and it was too tiring. And then, yeah, when I went to King's, I was like in halls in first year and this and that. And I kind of realized like everyone was just like quite like gravitating towards me naturally and quite like magnetized for some sort of reason. And I didn't really know why. And I was kind of surprised and happy. I was like, oh, maybe people actually like me because I'm like fun and engaging and interested. And so that was quite a nice shock because I was not really, I was not really expecting to be like quote unquote popular because I never really had been. But I think there's like something to be said about people gravitating towards authenticity.
I was
And
literally just thinking that exact same thing of like
yeah,
we know that when people are able to be their authentic self, that's when they thrive.
yeah, exactly. And I think like it sounds corny on its own, like be your authentic self, this and that. But
Mm.
honestly, like that is the tea. Like you have to be, if you're authentic, people can just gravitate towards you more because they know that you're not hiding anything. And therefore what they see is what they get. And as long as you act nicely and you're like respectful and like fun and engaging, then people are like, oh, this person's actually really great. And I don't feel like they're being shady and I don't feel like they're I guess it's different. Like, not everyone is like super confident and stuff. And that obviously helps me as well a lot in that, like, I'm quite confident and I don't
Yeah.
really give a shit if someone hates me. I'm like, well, that's your loss. Sorry. But at the same time, it's not always been like that. And I think it was a nice realization when I turned 18 because I was like, oh, people actually like me for me, which means that I probably am a good person. And it probably means that like in some sort of general way, like, doing some sort of good for the society in the sense that people appreciate my energy and what I'm bringing to a scenario, like wherever it is. So I think having that knowledge and that realization when I was 18 was quite useful because it meant that going forward, I was always doing things which felt honest to myself, but always acting in quite an honest and like cards on the table approach because yeah, just because I knew that it worked best for me. Like I could do like the really arrogant, like closed off type that I was doing at school to like protect myself, to be honest. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna be like the academic one who's like being a nerd and like doing loads of music stuff. Whereas I realized I could be more than that and just being my multifaceted self, of which there are many facets, but like the facets are all part of one thing, which is like overall, yeah, as I said, like hopefully a good person. Like I really don't have much to hide, like in terms of as who I am. I think it would be quite obvious if I did, because I wouldn't be able to speak so freely and like in an authentic way, and also act in an authentic way. I think obviously, like your actions speak louder than words, and it's like you can obviously talk the talk, and obviously barristers love to talk the talk, if you couldn't tell already. But like, it's like, are you gonna walk the walk? Like, are you gonna help that person that you said you're going to help? Like,
Yeah.
are you going to help this person get their insurance buyout? Like, and because you're the only person that they know that could do that. Like, are you actually going to put your time and your money where your mouth is? Or are you just going to say loads of things and not act on it? Because I have to say, like, when people just say stuff and they don't do it, I get so annoyed. I
Mm.
think it's really insincere, actually, and I don't think it's authentic at all. I think that means that there's a split self between the talking self and the doing self, and I really don't think they should be split in such a way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can we bring it back to this sense of self? It sounds like you had that from a young age, and
yeah.
I wonder if that your sense of self, where your early realizations as quite a repressed person, for quite a repressed period of your life,
Mm.
how that plays into your realization of queerness, but also in terms of your possibly in terms of your ADHD and your sense of justice.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. I think they're all interlinked. I think because I was so free in primary school, I knew that you could be free and unmediated and fab. Like, I'm sorry, but this may sound conceited, but it's not my fault that I'm fab. Like, society tries to make me not fab, but I just am. Like, that's just how it is. And I
True
remember
story. I've seen you at awards.
yeah,
Yes.
I just am. And it's like I conduct myself with grace, generally speaking, when I'm not being a dying swan. And like I think yeah, when I was in primary school, I was being very free in terms of my expression
Mm.
and how I was. And I yeah, just remember having the best time. And in contrast, at secondary school, when I was so limited, I remember being like, this is not real life. Is this reality? This kind of thing. And I was just like, this life is too short. Like, it's really not worth living that fake life or living this truncated life. And so I think the queerness and also being in London when I was 18, being just myself. I refused to like come out to people, but I was just myself, and I happened to be extroverted and like extravagant at times. So like, it's like I was in the club scene. I was, go-go dancing for my law school to pay for my law school. Like I was doing all these things, which actually helped me assume the self. And in some ways, I already knew myself when I was very young. People say, "Oh, I'm still discovering myself," and that's actually fine. Like you can be discovering yourself always, but I think I knew myself in terms of the core values and what I stand for from a very early age. And I also knew that because of this kind of like repression and also being a ginger, that doesn't help. Being like a kind of effeminate ginger in school is like potentially one of the worst things that you could have. And so I think you learn to build a thick skin, and you also learn that sometimes people say stuff and like they don't necessarily mean it, or if they do mean it, you need to like distance yourself ASAP potentially if they have more insidious intentions. And I think that I always had a sense of justice of what is right, of what's wrong. I think in fact being queer helped me understand justice as a concept. Like I remember watching Hunchback of Notre Dame and like really identifying with Quasimodo. And there's this bit where Quasimodo, the like hunchback, gets tied up, and then Esmeralda, who's like the fierce, like gypsy lady, she basically says something like to the kind of corrupt priest. She was like, "You speak of justice, yet you're cruel to those most in need of your help." Justice, this kind of thing. And I always think of that in terms of, why is society and why are we cruelest to those who are most in need of its help? And it certainly chimes a bell these days with like trans people. It's like, I almost can't believe how, and I'm not saying that I'm like the most compassionate and the most empathetic person ever, but like at the same time, there are certain base levels of respect that you must have for each human being. And I'm almost shocked or gagged, you could say, that so many people just do not care 1 inch or 1 ounce for trans people's lives. And in fact, they are very willing to kick a dog when it's down. Trans people are some of the most marginalized in society, yet you're still going to laugh at them and you're still going to not care when their rights are being repealed further. And it's kind of like, where is your humanity? Where is our collective humanity?
Yeah.
And it's kind of strange because I never thought I would necessarily be in this position where I'm kind of calling people out and society out for like not treating others with dignity and respect. I didn't necessarily see that on the cards for myself just because I didn't know that that's what I'd be doing. But I almost find it absurd that we've come to this point now where I have to, in a speech, say, is it dignified for someone to not be able to go to the toilet when they're in public for 7 hours and get a bladder infection? How am I even saying that statement? The fact that I have to say that statement to make people realize how messed up this like bathroom ban is beyond me.
Yeah.
And I think maybe at one point when I was younger, I thought I'd be like a pop star or a diplomat or something like this, right? But like the fact that I'm now on social media, like campaigning for people's rights is kind of interesting because I didn't necessarily see that coming, but I also see it as a matter of necessity rather than anything else.
Yeah. And we see that lack of humanity with the trans plus community. We see it with refugees. We see it with
immigrants.
We see it with disabled people. We're
black
seeing
and brown bodies dying.
Absolutely.
White people don't seem to care.
Seeing it across the board. And I wonder whether that calling out was also there from a young age. You said maybe a pop star, whatever. Like, did you have ambitions to go into law, or was that a complete?
Honestly, it was a compromised position. Like, if my parents were rich, I would be a pop star now. Like, no, I would. Like, I had the talent, I just didn't have the money. Like, to do music, you have to have some serious money, I would argue. I didn't have the like financial backing and the kind of like financial confidence to be able to be like, no, I'm just going to go into music. And that's fine. And so as a kind of like pragmatist, also like as someone who grew up with like both their parents on benefits at various points and this and that, like it was like I can't really say that I was culturally I didn't have much culture because I've always had like a lot of cultural richness in my life, but economically I was like pretty poor at lots of times. So I think I grew up with a kind of pragmatic approach to being like, okay, well, what's something where I can use my like performance skills, but then also use my brain because obviously I'd kind of like trained my brain over many years to, I guess, do analysis or reading or however you want to say it.
Where did that skill come from in itself?
I don't really know. I think I was just like either at school you become like I was like either I become a troublemaker or I become like this like out and proud shiny gay, which I didn't want to do at that moment because that wasn't me. Like I don't know, at that time there was only like Alan Carr and then maybe like a few others on TV who were this kind of like emblematic potential caricature of what gayness is. And I was not ready for that. I didn't want to do that. And so then I was like, okay, or I just become social recluse and like do my reading and like I don't know. I think I'm naturally very curious about loads of things like as a person and I'm always curious about people, societies, culture, music, like films, this and that. So I think I've always been very curious about everything in life, but also I guess because I learned the value of like discipline, it meant that I would never just like skive over something. Like I would dive in and like fully find out something or like, yeah, it was always, and I've always been passionate about like literature and books. Like I was reading, I mean, this is going to make me sound so lame and nerdy, but I remember like when I was 12, becoming obsessed with the existentialists, like the French ones, because I was also like Francophile because I was like learning French and this and that. And so I was just like reading all of the weird books by like Jean-Paul Sartre, Camus, de Beauvoir, this stuff about like what is existence. And in some ways, I think it was quite useful to me to learn at the time because it made me think, you know, do you have like an internal essence or does your existence form over iterative acts, which arguably is similar to like the Judith Butler angle on gender, for example, right? Like you create and co-create your gender over actions, over time. It's constantly evolving. And I think like for me to have a kind of understanding of like the existentialist position at like a young age, I think was quite useful in the sense that it really made me question like what are we all doing here? Like what is the purpose of me being here? Like why should I do this? Or like am I just here to like have fun? Or am I here to do something bigger than that? And if so, what is it? So I think I was always getting those having those ideas, but also yeah, just becoming nerdy about something just because that's what I want to do. Like when someone's like, "Oh my God, sorry, I'm a nerd," I'm like, "Love it. I'm also a nerd. Like it's fine."
It sounds like it sounds like you've self-shaped a lot of the Oscar we know and love now and how you show up in the world. And
Yeah.
I wonder how much of that with that nerdiness or fixation, right, we might want to call it in kind of like ADHD in
Yeah.
ADHD fields. Do you think that some of that is down to ADHD behaviors and
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think also, I guess before I go into that, I do have to give props to like my friends and family because I would not be here if they like with my family, we've had like difficult moments, I suppose you could say, but like ultimately I do now have a very supportive family and I'm very grateful to them. In a similar way, like I would be nothing if it wasn't for the constellation of my friends that I have around me who love me and support me. And so I do have to give props to them because they also give me a lot of life. Like
Mm.
it's all, I'm not just doing these videos in a vacuum. Like I'm constantly inspired by all the creativity around me, all like these super fab and like smart people and like kind people. Like, you know, I have to give a lot of props to that because I think that actually like these people make me a better person as well.
Yeah,
So I would
yeah.
just,
Who has within that then? Who do you think is, if you had to choose one, maybe two people, who do you think has shaped you the most along the way?
oh my God, that's very hard to
Hmm.
question. I don't know. Like, I think, well, I'm pretty close to my mum. My mum is very fab. She's always been one of my best supporters. And whilst we've had our difficulties, she's always been like generally supporting what I do. Um, I would say also in a law sense, like my mentors. I've got like a few mentors who know who they are. I will not name them, but they know who they are. And they're super important to me in the sense that they really give me guidance when I have a big kind of fork in the path of like my life path. Um, and yeah, I really appreciate them a lot. But also in a personal capacity, again, I probably will not name people per se, but it's like the friends who have been there with you since like 10 years or 15 years. Like these are my ride or dies kind of thing. And I'm very lucky to have quite a wide pool of them as well. Like it's not just like I'm kind of like randomly on my own. It's like actually I have many fab friends and it's like if they show up for you, I think that's the most important thing. I then, I guess, in my like more influencer sphere, I have people who inspire me as well. I think your work is amazing. I'm not just saying that. I love your work. But also like people like Jodie Hill, she does loads of stuff on like neurodivergence in the law, and we're very good friends. People like Jude, Becoming Jude,
Love
is a
Jude.
great friend and very fearsome advocate as well, and has taught me a lot about like advocacy in a kind of social sense. So yeah, I think like all these people really do inspire me, and yeah, I'm literally only a sum of my parts, and my parts include my friends and my family, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, going to the ADHD question, that was a very ADHD side quest, picture within a picture, or mise en abîme, as they say in French. Yeah, I think the ADHD side, it's like, I don't know. I don't want to call it a superpower because I think that can be a bit reductive, maybe. But I do think that I definitely have more energy than most people. I definitely don't need to sleep as much as most people, even though I'm trying to get really good at sleeping these days. But, you know, the difference is like I can function very well on 6 hours of sleep, whereas most people like need 8 hours. And, you know, that's just how my brain is. But I'm also not that good at falling asleep. Like last night, I was like, oh, I need to be up at 7:30 and then was still awake at 2 a.m. for some reason. So, you know, that comes with its own issues, which we deal with when we can. But yeah, I think like the ADHD side ultimately does help me navigate like doing so many things at
Mhm.
once. I think also like, you know, for me, I'm not just a lawyer. Like I'm also an advocate. I'm also a singer. I'm also a dancer, this and that. And like I do, so, or I'm also a linguist and, you know, I do so many different things, but it's like, I think that ADHD helps you be interested in things, but it's like, does the ADHD help you actually get good at them or not? And I would argue like not necessarily. Like I think ADHD is so fleeting that you can be like, "Da, da, 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 da," and then you kind of like peer into something, but you don't actually look at the thing. Whereas I think maybe it's the
Mm.
combination of like learning discipline and also having natural like high curiosity about like about loads of things. I'm like, no, no, let's actually go back and look into that thing. What is that about? What is its substance? What is its essence? What can I learn from this? What is it gonna teach me or others about something else? Like, I think yeah, so I'd say the ADHD helps in terms of having like a panoramic view on things potentially and being able to like dot through different things in a very fast way in a sometimes like non feels like a non-consensual way. It's like, sorry, you're meant to be doing this task. Can you stop doing that other task now and like go back to your main one?
I relate.
Yes, you know that one. But ultimately, yeah, I think that I mean the ADHD is not without its difficulties. Like, you know, when
Yeah.
it comes to I think probably for my job, the most annoying thing is like having to read high volumes of very boring content. Like there
Yeah.
was a time when I was literally just doing like personal injury car accidents and I just was so bored because it was not really my area and I don't really even drive. Like I was like, what side of the car is the driver on? I mean, I'm joking, but like, you know, this kind of thing where you're like not interested in it at all. And I think those, you know, it's like when you have a big task and it's slightly boring, it's like on that, you know, you've got that square which is like important, urgent, not important, not urgent. And so it could probably be important and potentially urgent. But then I think there should be another part on that squares where it's like fun or not fun. And it definitely goes on
Yes.
not fun. And I'm like, well, why should I do this? I mean, it's so like, so not giving me this like dopamine hit kind of thing that you sometimes need as an ADHD person to operate. So yeah, for me, it's been definitely a process in the last few years of how do I optimize myself in terms of my advocacy and you know, as an advocate. And it's useful in some ways to be doing stuff more than just myself. Like it's helpful to be advocating for a community because it gives me that kick when I don't want to work at 10 p.m., but I need to finish this piece of work. It makes me do it. Whereas sometimes I don't have that kick on my own. So it's almost like some sort of public accountability, which I find quite helpful. Whereas like, yeah, I think otherwise it can be like, why should I do this big, hard, boring task?
Yeah.
And I think that's, yeah, I mean, how do you find your kind of like coping with that type of thing? Because I think everyone has different ways of doing it, right?
Yeah, there needs to be another box added on top of that says extremely fucking urgent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How urgent are we
not doing
talking? Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, it's not my fault that I have like 15 deadlines a week. Like, that's just how it is. And in some ways, I feel like being a barrister, you know, the way that it works is like you're technically self-employed, but you work in a chambers with other barristers who do similar work. The way I describe it is like similar to a hairdressing salon. So like usually the people there are self-employed, but they pay rent to, i.e. 20% of their cut back to the salon because they're essentially paying for the office or paying for the rent. So that's kind of like what I do. But yeah, anyway.
My final question for this segment, I'm so excited to hear your response to this, is looking back so far, what are you most proud of to date?
Oh, I think probably I'm most proud of being on the window at King's College London on the Strand.
I saw that recently.
That is actually quite crazy. Even for me, like I can't believe that's happened because yeah, it's like apparently it's on the Strand, but it's also like in all of the campuses on all of these like digital boards and stuff. Apparently, like my friends keep on sending me pictures, be like, "Oh my God, your face slid across the screen again." I was like, "Oh God." But that was.
I saw it recently. I saw it recently on the Strand, and I used to work there, and I used to walk along that road and read all of them like time and time again. And then when I saw yours recently, I thought that's very cool.
Yeah, I feel like I think, I don't know. I feel like awards are a bit like mirrors. Like you don't want to look into the mirror for too long because you might fall into it.
Okay.
But
Ooh.
it can be quite a nice reflection of what you've achieved because it's essentially a mirror back at you of saying, look, this is what you've done. But I think it's also important to like walk past the mirror rather than walk into the mirror. So I think that was just quite cool because it was like this King's College London like Distinguished Alumni Award and it was for Changemaker of the Year. And yeah, I think it was nice because I think it was like recognition of all of this work that I kind of take for granted that I do. Like, you know, the social media stuff, I'm like, well, that's just part of what I do kind of thing. And some parts of it I really don't like editing videos is probably my least favorite.
It's so dull.
So annoying. Like it's not an ADHD task at all unless you're really nerdy about that. But like, you know, I sometimes have videos sitting there that I filmed 3 weeks later and I haven't had time to edit. And so then it's like, it's not, and sometimes it is literally like, I don't have time to do that right now. Like I've got too many things, but no, it was very nice to like have that recognition. And I think it's coming at a point where, you know, I'm doing more, I guess you could say like serious advocacy in the sense of, yeah, like speaking to MPs, writing academic articles, doing this stuff, which is hopefully like shaping public perception. But then there's also the less serious or like the video ones, which it's like, I think they also have their own value in the sense that it has a wider readership or wider watchership, if that's a word. And hopefully that kind of multi-pronged approach has had some sort of impact. But like, yeah, it was quite surreal to get that award because went to the award ceremony, my old French tutor, Siobhan McIlvany came, who taught me, he was like one of these like fierce, like feminist tutors who taught me all about like women's writing and French Algeria and stuff like this. And yeah, she presented the award to me, which was really cute. My mum came, my godmother came. So it was like really nice. And yeah, kind of, it's one of those things that you never really, I know someone said to me the other day, they were like, Oscar, when you were at King's, like, did you think you were going to be on one of those boards? And I was like, of course not. Like, I'm not that arrogant. Come on. Like, why would I think that? Whereas now it's happened. I'm like, oh my God, that's actually quite vibes. I don't know. It's still quite surreal. That's why I think that's why I say it, because it still feels quite new.
But so deserved.
Maybe that's it. I don't know. Thank you.
They deserved. The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Yes, let's do it.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with album because music is always like my starting point, probably. And I remember when I was in uni, I listened to like the FK Twigs EP1, which was like her first proper release. And I remember just being so mind blown by like the sound and by this experimental feeling and nature. And it just kind of gave me this idea of like brain expansion or unexpectedness, which I just think is very iconic. And I think that it's like, for me, you know, listening to this more like ambient style of music really protects my brain waves in some sort of way. I don't know how to describe it. Like I see it as almost this more ambient side of things creates like a semi-permeable membrane which cloaks my consciousness. And I really love that in any music or in any kind of albums. But I think the EP1 from FK Twigs back in maybe like 2013 or so, 2012, I think that was really changing for me in terms of like, yeah, having this expansion of brain and sound. And, you know, ultimately, I think these days, it's like I use my voice mainly in a spoken sense, but it's still an auditory experience. And actually, most of being a barrister is about listening rather than speaking. Like, I think it's like to be a good advocate, you have to be probably like at least 60% listening to what the person is saying to you, listening to what society is saying, listening to what your community is saying on the ground, and reacting to that, or foreseeing issues and then, you know, nipping them in the bud. So yeah, I would say that's probably my most iconic album, even though it's actually an EP, but yeah, whatever.
What's the saying you live by and one that you'd put in the bin?
I would say one at the moment, which is very topical, is no justice, no peace, no toilet police.
Here for it.
That's one that I made up. And the other one, which I would still very much use, is which I sometimes use when people are just being ridiculous. And it's from Alyssa Edwards on Drag Race. And she says, "Girl, get a grip, get a life, and get over it." And this is what she says. And sometimes, like, when someone's being ridiculous, including myself, I'm like, babes, just get a life, get a grip, and get over it. It's fine. Yeah, and the other, I know you didn't ask for three, but I'm going to give you three anyway. The other one, which I really like at the moment, is like, when I'm getting too het up about something, or, you know, you can get too flustered and this and that. Mm-hmm. And I would only say this to like a good friend. I would never say this to a client, but like, when we're getting too flustered about something and it really doesn't deserve that time, I'm like, yeah, but guys, remember, ultimately, who cares?
Mine is who died.
Yeah, who died? Yeah. Ultimately, who cares? Who died? Yeah. Same thing. And actually, sometimes you're like, you know what? We are literally just a little speck of dust in the massive universe. Like, who cares? Like, it's fine. And then probably the one that I would get rid of, oh my God, I'm not sure. Yeah, you can circle back to me on that. I'm not really sure, I have to think. But
mine is, it is what it is.
Oh, that one. That is, what is it? I think that's a tautology. Yeah, it is what it is. What may be, may be. Yeah, that's
we are where we are. Like, literally, stop being so complacent.
Yeah, stop repeating yourself. Stop repeating yourself. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
Oh my God, I've definitely had a few adventures. Best adventure. I mean, I can tell you about a funny adventure. There was one time when I was in Barcelona with one of my best friends, Daisy, and we were just getting drunk on this like €1 sangria. This was when we were students. And we were getting drunker and drunker. And then we were like, we didn't really speak Spanish, to be honest, but we wanted to know where the gay bars were. And basically, we were like, ¿Dónde está the bar de... And we didn't know what the word for gay is. Turns out it's just gay. But we were saying like the bar, which I think is like a rude word.
Yes.
Maybe similar to the F word. Yes, exactly. And we were just drunkenly like walking around stumbling around the streets at this point because we were so drunk on our Don Simon sangria for like 150. And we basically ended up at this really weird bar. And then because our Spanish was so bad, we then like ended up it became a foam party, but like without us realizing it was a foam party. So we were just like going around, and all of a sudden this foam starts coming out, and then all of a sudden we're like almost naked. I lose my phone, my keys, my wallet, my dignity. I don't know what's happening, but it was like very funny. And then yeah, we end up finding each other. We go back to the hostel. We're staying in this like gross hostel. And then yeah, the next day Daisy is going back to Barcelona. I go back. I'm doing a summer school in like a work stay in the south of France at this time to like increase my French. And then I have to get this like blah car, which is like a car share with this random like 6'5" man called Innocent. And I'm going there with like massive hangover and no phone. And I don't even know how, and then it ended up on this like weird motorway in the north of Barcelona somehow. And like I found him, but honestly, I had to cross the motorway in my almost drunk but like hungover state, being like, am I going to get run over? And he was on the other side. And I remember being like, this is actually insane. I managed to find him, and he managed to like drop me home fine to this French house. But yeah, that was quite crazy because it was like, yeah, it was just like the bar one followed by the foam party, followed by the losing everything, followed by the having to go and visit this man called Innocent, like in the middle of nowhere over the motorway. It was like quite intense.
That is an adventure.
Yeah.
I've got many of those. We'll have to share some sometime.
Maybe offline.
Off camera. What 3 words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Ooh. I think for my origin story, I would say broke, resilient, fab.
Broke, resilient, fab.
Yeah.
Here for all of those.
I think I had another third word, but honestly, I don't remember what it is. So no, I think they're all accurate, to be honest. I mean, yeah, starting from broke, now less broke, but like it's the origin story, right? So like broke,
yeah, absolutely.
Broke, resilient, fab. I think it's
broke, resilient, fab. Here for all of those. Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
Exciting things. So I'm working on my book.
Well, hey, that's huge news.
Yes, I'm doing my book. It's like Queers Know Your Rights kind of thing. Basically, the book is about surviving and thriving as a queer in the modern day and age. I'm really passionate about furnishing people with their rights and what that might look like. It's all very well you knowing that you might have a right, but do you know what the right is and do you know how to enforce it? So all of these things, especially when we're like living in this place of like, are our rights actually being repealed? I think what this pocketbook hopefully does is conveys to as many people as possible. Like, this is what you could do if you want to get a ID change, or this is what you can do if like you're discriminated against at work, or this is what you can do if your housing landlord says this and like is homophobic or transphobic kind of thing. So yeah, this is my book at the moment that I'm doing. Having a documentary made about me, which is coming out soon. And there's probably loads of other things, but honestly, like the diary is so full that I barely know what's happening from one week to the next. So you'll just have to see it.
Well, stay tuned, everyone. What brings you joy?
What brings me joy? Being present in the moment, dancing, laughing with my friends, getting justice for people, helping the underdog, walking around in the sun, going to my yoga practice, being upside down, doing my PT sessions and doing gym, just living life. Like, I don't know, I think that there can be a very toxic environment with lawyers where it's like, work, this is all that you do. I actually think that resisting that narrative can be quite radical, and I refuse to align to that. It's like, no, no, I will enjoy myself and go on holiday this weekend. And
Yeah.
you will not necessarily know, but nor do you have to, because I will still do my deadlines and I will still enjoy my life as much as I can and I'm able to. And I think if you're queer and you're able to find joy in today's modern day and age, then hats off to you, because it can be very difficult, but ultimately there are so many avenues where we create our own freedom, we create our own joy, we create our own happiness. And I think queers do joy like the best in some sort of way. Queers are the most fun at the party. Queers will turn it out the most on the dance floor. Like, queers will be the most artistic and will be wearing the most insane outfits. Like, there is so much joy which almost comes hand in hand with queerness. Maybe because it's also so close to hardship. And I think a lot of the time I find myself in spaces which are simultaneously utopian and dystopian, meaning, okay, in this space, everyone looks so fab, everyone is so nice and so gorgeous and so fun. But then all of a sudden, you see the darkness and it can become very dystopian very quickly. And that can happen in your day to day. It can happen like at an event where you are. It can happen in your friendship circles. Like this kind of juxtaposition between utopia and dystopia. Like ultimately, we live in the world in which we live, another tautology, but I'll say it anyway. And we will never truly know what true utopia and true dystopia is, but we can make more utopian environments around us. Rather than being the best thing ever, we can just make them better. We don't have to make them worse. And whilst I think there can be some dangers of striving for better all the time, you know, there can be like an elitist angle in that, which we need to be careful about, like not necessarily pursuing. But I think if we can all be better, and if we can all be kinder, and if we can all be like more human is at the end of the day. And I know that with humanism comes fault and comes error and comes imperfection, but like ultimately we are not striving for perfection. We're striving for reality. We're striving to feel something. We're striving for joy. We're striving for presence. We're striving for living rather than dying. Like we should be allowed to live rather than feeling like we're constantly in the process of dying. And I think that is something that I hold close to myself. It's like, life is short. Just live your life. Like living your life is going to look different for every single person. Lean into what you're good at. Lean into being kind to others for the sake of being kind and not trying to get something back in transaction. Like lean into like informing people and calling people out if you have to. Lean into justice. Lean into having a good moral compass. Like all these things. I mean, it makes me sound like I think I'm Mother Teresa. I'm definitely not. You know, no one is perfect. None of us are perfect. But like ultimately, if people can like hold each other in a community sense more, I just think it takes the weight off all of our shoulders more. So I suppose it's a kind of plea for like self-realization and self-awareness, like know how you're coming across, but also being invested in the communal like group self rather than the individual self, I think is something very powerful, and something which we can all do more of.
I mean, you've just answered my last question perfectly, which was around words of encouragement or wisdom. And I think that challenging individualism and tapping into communal self-care and love is so important. And it's what you're doing out there.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, I think like, yeah, it's an interesting one because everyone seems to think that to be the best version of the self, you have to like be a star or something. But I don't necessarily think that's the right way of looking at it. I think like individualism is so much weaker than synthesis and group action. And I think there was potentially a point at which maybe it was doing my advocacy around trans rights, but like there was a point at which I really truly felt like I understood that. And it's like, you know, when you have a performance background, it's like, yes, you're an individual, but I sung in choirs, I played in orchestras, like, you know that the group sound is bigger than the individual in most circumstances. The individual can be useful, but like, ultimately, you know, the power is in the group. So I think that, yeah, there's a lot to be said about like the power of the group, and individualism also can be a very lonely place to be. Like, I think when you're able to separate like the ego from the self, that's also incredibly important. You know, just be like, oh, well, yeah, I'm just like out here, just like blobbing around. I'm just like here vibing. Like, it's not really about how I'm being perceived and this and that. Like, that's not really important. Like, why don't we create real connection, real love, like radical love for others, radical self-love. And yeah, basically create community, because you can also kind of, I guess individualism matters in the sense of like leading by example. Like, I'd like to hope that in most of my actions, I kind of like lead by example. Like, if I think people are doing stuff wrong, I'd rather kind of show them how to do it just in what I do, and then rather than tell them what to do, because that seems like really annoying, you know, show don't tell kind of thing. But yeah, like lead your communities, like do what you can to help. If it's in the background, then that's also really important. Not everyone has to be in the foreground. Not everyone loves speaking, like this and that, like, you know, that's also fine. But kind of finding the hope and the knowledge and also the wisdom in communal like get together. Like, there's so much more wisdom when there's more people around, because you've then got like different age groups, different experiences, you've got like properly diverse experiences, and you become less of a kind of echo chamber of the self, and you may become an echo chamber of community, but at least there's less echo and more kind of feeling.
Less echo and more feeling.
Yes.
What a great note to finish on. Oscar, thank you so much for spending this time with me, for saying yes.
Yeah.
I love the way that you show up in the world and the work that you're doing. And I really hope to see you on stage singing soon. That's that I need to see that.
Yes, maybe. Well, maybe that maybe there's something else in the works there. Let's see.
Oh, okay, cool. Stay tuned. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you.
Oscar, thank you so much for taking time out of your super busy schedule to appear as a guest on Pause and Rewind. I have loved sharing this moment of conversation with you. I hope that everyone else enjoyed it too. There's a couple of standout moments for me. Firstly, I can't stop laughing about Oscar being called a dying swan by one of their haters. Absolutely hilarious, and I love how Oscar leans into that insult. You know, dying swan, but at least doing it gracefully. And also, individualism is so much weaker than synthesis. The power of and the importance of community, the importance of radical self-love, and radical community love as well, and coming together. And what can happen if we all put in that much more effort, you know, and what could happen if we pool all of our resources and the difference that we can make to each other. Oscar, again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. Please do like, subscribe, share, comment, help podcasters beat these pesky algorithms and challenges that we're facing. Stay tuned for more amazing guests on Pause and Rewind. Cheers.